Welcome to Deconstructing Islam, where Usama and I, that's Usama, help people,
Hello.
where we help people who are struggling with Islam, and we help the outside world better understand us. It's a weekly live stream. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of us like selecting a topic and talking about it at length for an hour and a half, I want to go on to the Exmuslim subreddit and just talk to people about what they're interested in right now. Maybe some of them will come in because we'll give them links and stuff. So let's try this out. And by the way, everyone, we just did the first anniversary of Uniting the Cults. You can't join us live anymore, but you can go watch it. The link is in the description. It was awesome. 5 hours. All of the every hour was really fun for me. And man, it got tiring though. I don't think I can do more than 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that no matter how interesting the topics are, it's like when you're going to a conference and you have all these people talking. Usually, they end up limiting the number of minutes that you have to talk. It's not like an open-ended, but you end up with a kind of a panel. So the organization is slightly different from this kind of thing, but I think the long form is usually much better if you want to get into depth with different people with different perspectives.
Yeah. That was what was so cool about it. It's not just my ideas, you know. The people I had tons of ideas that's outside my range of things, and of course, a lot of what they said was like equivalent to things I say, or at least it's underneath the things I say. But having said it out loud is a lot better than I talk a lot about science. And Mariam was like, "Hey, man, it's not just about science; it's also empathy." I agree with that. This is why. But when you listen to me talk, I don't talk about empathy very much. You know, the birth of Uniting the Cults. We did a whole episode, a whole interview on the scientific age. Is it implied there? Sure, but we never use the word. You know, so different people focus on different things, and I think that was good. And so it was a really cool event. Next year is going to be really awesome. I can tell it's going to be, because of what's happened in the last two. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started then. I'm going to put this on the screen. This is just my saved posts on my Reddit. On some of these, I wonder if we even want to reply. Man, this looks so small. You can't see, huh?
Well, it depends. But if someone is actually watching us on a mobile device, I would imagine it's barely readable.
Yeah, and a lot of people do.
On a computer, it's perfect. But
let's see if I can make our faces smaller. Let's see if that's better. Oh shit! No, I can't change that. Okay. Maybe at the bottom. Oh shit!
we usually, I think you usually are able to make the faces smaller. There is another, maybe.
What do you think of this?
That's still taking a lot of screen real estate.
Yeah, but at least we can see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah. What else can we do? So, do you want to? What I do with posts like these is I look for if anyone replied good stuff already, and if there was already a good reply, I figure it's not worth it to say the same things. So somebody's talking here about guilt, and I quickly go to the comments. There's two. How would you move out without them noticing?
How about you walk us through their initial post and why you thought that this was something?
I'm actually telling you. Well, I didn't even read it, and I'm actually doing with you what I normally do.
Okay.
I didn't read it. I right away know from the title that it's about guilt. I look at the comments. No one mentioned the guilt thing.
Okay.
They're just replying to something that's in here. So they're 18, thinking of moving out soon. So I already know what they feel guilty about. I don't know if you can tell already. They feel guilty about leaving their family, because the standard tribalist view is you're supposed to stay with your family regardless of what they do to you. And by that logic, even if your family was bad to you, you still can't leave, kind of thing. That's where everyone's guilt is coming from. And it's not specific to it's not specific to Islam. It's not specific even to the cultures in that area. It's specific to any culture that's very tribalistic. I noticed America is has how do I say this? Not America, maybe the West more generally has distanced itself from tribalism more than the countries we came from.
I mean, the fact that you have any kind of urban development that's reliant on industry more than this kind of extended family that might be working in one kind of line of work, like, I don't know, a family of farmers or a family of whatever it is that they're doing. It makes sense for them to stick together and work together. So tribalism doesn't really just come out of nothing. It does have some background that is very much related to the economics of that particular society.
Coping mechanisms.
Yeah, and so that then translates into other areas. So if I want to imagine other incentives for why tribalism in those societies is still strong, it's because numbers are counted as a force for that particular faction against others. They still think in terms of we are against them. If there is, and that's, even though it's antiquated, you don't actually see raids in the ancient sense. It's still something that pervades that line of thought, and so
So
it's
let me
not.
ask you,
Mhm.
if this person understood what we're saying about tribalism, do you think it would have an effect, a significant effect to their conception, their guilt? Like, what would they have to learn about what we're saying?
I think sometimes it's helpful to know what kind of society they're in, because if that's a very urbanized society, um, I think it's possible very often to get away with doing a lot of these things that would be considered as taboo or frowned upon from a traditional point of view. Um, so, is the person 18 or less than 18?
They said 18, yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably 18 in most of these societies is not considered an independent person. They cannot go fend for themselves unless they have some kind of a pretext for not being with their family, like I don't know, going to college, for example, or ending up working or something of that sort. But as long as they are part of that kind of society where there is especially financial dependence more than emotional, but emotional also, if there is financial dependence, then it's going to be extremely hard to break away from the family and just moving away. It's not something that's feasible from a practical point of view.
So all I'm saying is here, would you like to learn about why you have the guilt in the first place? I think that would help you as a step toward ridding yourself of this unearned guilt. And then I say, Sam and I are discussing this right now on Deconstructing Islam. Here's the link. And, it might be worth putting a timestamped link, but
Yeah, because I don't know how old is this post?
this is like 3 days ago.
Okay, it's possible that this person is still tracking this. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's I would definitely side with the practical considerations for this. If the person is thinking that it's a purely guilt issue, I think it is still possible to maintain relations with the family, because I'm almost sure that not all members of the family are going to be viewing this the same way. Um,
Well,
some
let's go ahead and mention this basic part where people think that their parents would disown them, partly because maybe their parents actually say that. But in some cases where parents are saying that, it's a bluff. It's 100% bluff. They wouldn't do it. And in other cases, they think they would do it, and they may even try, and then they won't because it doesn't work with them. It's, they are doing something that Islam tells them to do, but they also have a conscience, and their conscience is stronger than their Islam.
Mhm.
At
and
least for a lot of people.
Mhm.
So you
And
don't know what your parents are going to do.
yeah, it's not only that you have so many different complicated um, conditions that go into that. So if I were in that person's shoes, I would start looking at, is it actually something that um, would have high stakes for the family itself? Like, for example, let's think about the issue of honor, which is very often why people might act against. Oh, that's better.
Should I go a little bit bigger?
No, I think that's good.
No, it's something like here. This is a small change, but a little bit bigger.
Yeah, yeah, possibly. Yeah, so in the case of honor killings, for example, or anything that involves honor, uh, if there is, for example, some kind of a sexual occurrence where sex happened outside of the family, outside of marriage, and it ends up hurting the family's reputation, then it's going to be incumbent on the males of the family to act in order to purge that dishonor from their point of view. And that's why they might act in a way that might seem very brutal and very hurtful, physically and mentally, economically. Um, that might propagate a little bit in the mentality of people, thinking that, well, if I were to leave Islam and my family is going to disown me for pretty much the same reasons. We're not really talking about, oh, my family is afraid I'm going to be going to hell because of this. That's another consideration, but I'm not necessarily thinking that this is the main consideration. I think it's that social aspect of this. Is this going to be reflecting badly on them or not? That's probably the highest stakes. Otherwise, if it's an internal family thing, uh, my suspicion in most cases is that at least part of the family is not going to be acting in that kind of radical way, whether it involves violence, whether it involves a person going into depression. Oh, my son is leaving the religion. I'm going to
Threatening suicide.
yeah, yeah, some kind of a radical action that's based on this. So it's probably something that's going to depend a lot on the people who are involved in this. It's so hard to generalize, but very often some kind of a gentle exploration, instead of just putting it in a kind of a binary way. Either I leave Islam and risk losing my family completely, or I stay with my family and just have to cope with the situation in order to avoid the kind of repercussions that this person is afraid of.
All right, let's go to the next one. Oh, now this screen stuff is looking weird. What is this? Too big? Here we go. The next. Oh, yeah, I just did that one. This is an interesting one. It's very short. If your beloved parents or wife and children die, how do you cope? And they say being agnostic is so hard. There's 18 comment or 17 comments. What I also like to look for is if the person replied to any of the comments and how that's going, because sometimes you can see they're getting a lot of benefit already, or so far I'm looking and there's no replies from the original person. Nothing. Right?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, nothing. That happens sometimes, and this is 3 days ago. I could try to say what I think. Have I had anything like that happen? My parents both still around. Wife that's a non-issue, I guess. Children still alive. Have I had anyone close to me die? Not really yet. I don't really know how that's gonna go.
I did have a few deaths of people who were close to me, including my mother. And apart from, well, I had deaths that happened earlier in my life, but I was too young to actually consider that an issue. And when my mother died and my uncle died, also a very close person to me, I was already I had left the religion already many years, so it didn't actually feel like, okay, religion would have given me that crutch to go through that tough time. That honestly did not actually even occur to me. I never thought
Well,
of.
look, they're making they're saying something here that's telling us how they think.
Well, the reason why I'm mentioning religion is if the person is agnostic, it feels like they're still so close to religion that they are thinking in religious terms.
And of the concept of a soul and an afterlife.
Yeah,
That
so
they're gonna see them again later.
yeah, when someone tells me that they're agnostic, it means that they are seriously entertaining the possibility that,
So
okay, that
now you don't have that in your head. I don't have that in my head. But from they're using their terminology, we're coping fine. I think I'm coping fine. Although you can't say my worldview has been tested at all. Yours has. You said your mother died. So how did you cope with that without having a belief, or even like you have no idea? How do I say this? You're not one of those that even thinks there's a chance. They just say that there's the chance there's a soul, or there's a chance there's an afterlife. You don't see it that way. You're never going to see them again. How do you cope with that?
Well, if I'm looking at, so let's suppose that I'm at a funeral and I'm looking at the people around me. It's very rare to see cultures where people are celebrating what's actually happened. Even the most devout cultures, people who believe in Islamic martyrdom, they still cry. They believe that this person is now in heaven or on the way there, and that he's going to be, I don't know, interceding with Allah for them. And so they should actually be jubilant about this, that this person has died. But in reality, you look at them and they act like they don't believe in an afterlife. They don't believe that this person is still alive in some form. Why are they sad if that's actually true? What I'm saying here is that religion can sometimes provide a kind of a consoling effect, especially when it comes to having a community that believes the same thing. That might create a way of community support, of people believing in that kind of afterlife. But at the same time, they are mourning. That mourning is a kind of a human thing that's going to be affecting everybody no matter what. You lost that person, you're not seeing them again. You might believe, okay, I'm going to be seeing them once I die, but in reality, that moment that you're dealing with, you're sad, you're feeling that loss, that disconnection that has happened. And I'm claiming here that whether you are religious or not, you're going to be experiencing that anyway, unless you have some kind of an extreme, bizarre constitution that you really are believing that this person is still alive. In that case, I would actually have you go and check yourself, because that person just died.
You said check yourself. You mean like therapy or what?
Probably, because if you're actually not mourning, it means that you're either delusional or you're having some serious repression of your emotions, that you're not reacting to that situation. I mean, it's normal. This kind of denial is not something that's uncommon. But if the person dies and you're actually celebrating, I don't think that this is normal. If the person dies and you're not reacting at all, maybe that person didn't really mean much to you to begin with.
You're kind of
But
saying like, yeah, it's going to be hard, and that's okay and normal, and part of life,
mm-hmm.
and you can get acquainted with that without trying to seek and need a security blanket called the soul and afterlife.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm claiming here is that everybody's going to be going through the same kind of mourning. Religion has developed over thousands of years in order to offer some kind of a support, but that doesn't mean that it's the only kind of support. Remember that the support that happens here is not really only through that belief that you think that there is a soul that's going to persist after you're dead. You have to have this community after around you that's not only believing the same thing, but also providing a kind of an emotional support, with people reinforcing that belief, seeing people around you thinking the same way, that might alleviate some of the situation. So I'm not saying that it's useless, but at the same time, I'm saying that it's not necessarily the only way that people can find support and solace after the loss of a loved one.
All right, let's move on to the next one. This is going to be an interesting one. If religion isn't real, then how does everything exist? And the first thing I spot in here is Big Bang Theory. I'm going to go ahead and record the time here. We started at 24 minutes. And let's go ahead and read the post. There's 29 comments, by the way. I recently looked into the Big Bang Theory, and everything I saw that scientists can't actually describe how the singularity ever happened. And now I get
why humans.
Why the word why humans invented God, but also Islam is not real, and other religions don't seem very convincing either. Not to mention civilization has been around for like 300,000 years, but only in the past few thousand years has religion started, which to me clearly proves religion is man-made. I don't know, I'm relatively new ex-Muslim, so is this probably a stupid question, but does anyone have a reasonable explanation for how we exist without a God?
I mean, it sounds like the person already has answered their own question, in the sense that, okay, they're thinking about the singularity, for example. One misconception about the singularity is that there is some kind of a special event that is unprecedented and inexplicable and so on. And right now you have that AI singularity that's also being tossed around as a concept, and so people might be confusing the magnitude or the implication of the two. But in reality, we have to remember that the Big Bang singularity is not, first of all, the singularity that you think it is. First of all, A singularity appears in general relativity, which basically tells you that the magnitude of the gravity at that point is going to go to infinity. And we know that there are issues with that, because when you're going to such small spaces, or such small scales, you have to introduce quantum mechanics. So I would not say singularity as a kind of an ultimate thing. The Big Bang itself is just the limit of the applicability of our current theories. It's not the limit of our ability to explain and understand.
Wouldn't you say there's a bigger issue in his line of logic, which is he's saying we don't know something from science, and then he's saying how could there not be a God? I think what he's doing is if we don't know something, therefore God.
Yeah, that's another part. But the first part is that kind of finality, that kind of ultimate reality that seems to give people that, oh, there is that singularity that is inexplicable. It's inexplicable within the theoretical framework that we have right now. So that's one big issue. It's not the limit of science, it's the limit of what we have right now. And we have a lot of clues on how to proceed beyond the point where we are. It's just that we have not reached that progress just yet to say with confidence how to approach that. That's what the Big Bang is. It's the limit of that applicability of general relativity and quantum mechanics, each on its own. We have to have that merger of the two.
So I just add a sentence in here that we talked specifically about the singularity, and I said you're a theoretical physicist, so maybe that gets you thinking to come. All right.
Well, what I would recommend is that the person tries to look a little bit more at what that mystery that the singularity seems to be generating really is. I'm not saying that there is no mystery at the beginning of the universe, especially if we consider the universe to be synonymous with existence. What I'm saying is that there is a great deal of misconception that's involved in here, and saying that science is not able to progress and somehow religion has an answer to this, or some other form of human endeavor that is able to do it. That's also a cop out, because science is the one that's proven itself over and over in being able to tackle these issues in a very effective and empirically measurable way. If that's the case, you go back and invoke Bronze Age and Iron Age ideologies that have been put out of use for a long time. That's
this next post. Found out I'm bisexual. I don't know what to do. They're talking about wanting to move out, leave the country from Saudi Arabia, or they are Saudi Arabian. I don't know how to help something like this. I don't experience anything like this. You have anything you might want to say?
Well, I mean,
they're saying, how do I cope? Is there any hope for me? Are there any viable means to get out of this situation?
I'm not saying that things have necessarily completely changed in Saudi Arabia, but they
I'm not sure what country they're in. Oh, they are saying they're in Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's gotten better recently. I heard something. What, they're allowing alcohol now?
Yeah, I don't believe that Saudi Arabia has really progressed. It's just the veneer of things. It's if you want to make a true cultural change, you cannot just order it to happen, which is basically what Mohammed bin Salman has been doing. Just saying, okay, we're going to be changing things. You cannot change the people. You cannot change. You can change the regulations. You will allow people who have those tendencies to start expressing themselves. They're going to go to nightclubs. They're going to have alcohol and so on. But that's not necessarily expressive of the totality of
You got
this.
to be able to say something to these people. I don't know. I have a conflict where my view on suicide is different than what a lot of people's view is. Like I say that in the far future, if I'm still around and I don't want to be here anymore, I'm going to commit suicide. But I don't really want to say that to a young person who's in a situation like this.
No, definitely. I mean, this is an advice that, or advising someone who's in that situation requires.
Well, it's not just it's a mindset thing too, because look what happens in your head. You're dealing with some major nasty shit right now, and you're thinking, well, you know what? If this gets any worse, I'll just commit suicide, so everything's fine.
Well, I think it's not a good idea to generally advocate something that requires talking to the person.
Yeah, I don't want to advocate it, but it's something you can do in your own head. Because if you thought, no, I have to grudgingly not commit suicide for decades, and decades, and imagine an extreme case that our technology gets good enough where science can, doctors can keep you alive indefinitely. Well, that means you have to make a hard choice. Are you going to live forever? And let's say it's not even good living. Like, let's say they keep you alive, but you're in pain. So it's shitty living, okay? And they can keep you alive and in pain forever. Well, now you really have to make a choice. And I think there's going to be, it would be normalized to do suicide in the very far future. And actually, there's countries doing this now. I think it was Sweden. I don't remember which country, but they invented this, thing you can get in. You press a button, and now you're dead. And part of the idea is it shouldn't be seen as a bad thing to do that. It's seen, and maybe this is mostly coming from religions, but it's seen as it is a sin in those religions to commit suicide. So combined with the culture, it's seen as a bad thing. Like, hey, how do they say it? Even in these countries, they say you're being selfish for wanting to commit suicide because, okay, so you saved yourself, but then you screwed everybody else.
Yeah.
Which is connected to that same guilt we were just talking about a couple posts ago.
No. What I think is that
I don't think I'm going to reply to this. I don't want them to see what we have.
Can you go to the top, please? Can you go to the top?
I'm just saying I don't want to reply to this with what we're talking about.
Okay, so if this person just found out that they are bisexual, it's very normal not to know what to do, but that doesn't mean that they will be always in that kind of situation. In any kind of society, you will find a significant portion of the population, significant in terms of numbers, not necessarily percentages, significant that is either homosexual or bisexual or whatever. And these do cope in one way or another, regardless of the type of society. And so finding out for the first time might be a kind of an issue, especially with all these limitations around you.
Can they find, it sounds like you're saying, how can they find other bisexuals around them?
Well, the thing is,
in Saudi Arabia.
Well, I'm not in Saudi Arabia to say that, but it's always possible if you're looking hard enough. So let me give a completely different example. As an ex-Muslim atheist living in the United States, coming from an Arab country, you would imagine that I am in such an isolated and unique situation that How would I find other ex-Muslims? Well, I have so many ex-Muslims that I know in all over the world, and I can
But that's like
pinpoint.
almost all internet and almost no in person locally or in your city, right?
Well, if you're really interested, you can find people, whether through the internet or other venues. What I'm saying here is that according to the title, this person just found out, so they do probably feel a kind of a helplessness with the situation, looking at the society around them. But I don't think it's as hopeless as it might seem. They obviously have to act very carefully, but at the same time, it's not as hopeless as it might seem.
I don't know how to say that. And now I'm afraid to link to this because they'll see the other part that we said.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll stay quiet. And I don't know if this is the right decision, but that's what we're going with right now. Can this be considered more proof that Islam is a false religion? Without even reading this, I have a problem with the more proof. Because let's go ahead. What is this? 37 minutes. Because what happened? There's no such thing as more proof. One piece of proof is enough to refute a theory. Uh, but I like to say a lot more than that. So, what do you
Well,
want to say more than that? Should we read this?
yeah. Let's go ahead and I mean, it's a little bit hard to determine from the title exactly what the person's talking about.
I'm not completely sure of this myself, which is why I'm asking. But learning about Islam, you learn about how originally other scriptures were the word of God, like the Torah. This is before they were altered by man. Then Mo received revelations. And now we have a worldwide book club about rape and liking kids who play with dolls. But the Quran also states that nobody can change his words. So essentially, the Quran states man cannot change the word of God, but also Islam comes from the fact that man changed the word of God. Did you follow? He's
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is a very classic contradiction that has always been pointed out about Quran. So the Quran says about itself that it's going to be preserved. There are several places where it says that it's going to be preserved for eternity, and yet at the same time, it emphasizes that other former scriptures have been modified by man. So there is a contradiction. Is God capable of preserving his scripture or not? And if he's not capable, what prevents the Quran from being changed? So, yeah, I mean it's a contradiction, and it's obvious that it's really expressing a genuine situation that many people have come up with scenarios to address, but it still is a contradiction. You either preserve your word or you don't. um,
sometimes I think saying stuff like this doesn't actually help people because just because he said more proof doesn't mean he's thinking in with the concept of more proof. Because
yeah,
a lot of what we
yes.
say isn't exactly matching what we meant.
Yeah, it seems that first the person is listing a few issues with the Quran that seem to be a kind of a criticism about the rape, etc., etc. And then on top of that, the Quran is saying that it's going to be preserved compared to the other scriptures. So,
All right, that was an easy one. We didn't really say much on that one. Was Momo a schizophrenic or just lying?
well, there is a lot of evidence from the Sirah that can be interpreted and has been interpreted by some people as a kind of a set of symptoms of a special type of epilepsy that affects the temporal lobe. not schizophrenia, but a kind of epilepsy. So you can actually find descriptions of the seizures that would afflict him when supposedly the revelations are coming down to him. And there are other situations where you have other people that seem to be experiencing the same thing. So, for example, um, the experience that Paul had on the way to Damascus, where Jesus manifested to him, seems to be of the same type. Um, Fyodor Dostoevsky, the novelist, the Russian novelist, had epilepsy, and he speaks very often about uh, uh, being able to understand Muhammad better than many other people, supposedly because of the fact that he has this kind of mystic experience that comes to him during the epilepsy. And this special kind of epilepsy is very much related with this kind of prophetic experience. So it is possible to say that this is the case. This is not a diagnosis, even though I have seen people who are qualified talk about it. But again, you cannot diagnose a historical figure just by reading accounts like that. You have to put them through an MRI machine. You have to look at their brain, what's actually happening inside the brain, and so on. It's not possible, but many of the symptoms do match. Is it schizophrenia? Who knows? Maybe. But let me actually say something about the other part. Is he lying? I think if you look at the first parts of the Quran and the first biography, the first parts of the biography of Muhammad, it seems that he was genuinely believing in what he says. I personally had a really hard time after having left Islam believing that he was lying. But then you look at the second part of his life when he went to Medina and started getting these revelations about all sorts of things that pertain directly to his life. You had events that have to do with disputes with his wives, things that are related to military things, to the degree that Aisha, his favorite wife, the youngest that was mentioned earlier in the playing dolls and so on, is reportedly saying to him something to the effect, it seems that your God replies to you so quickly to address whatever it is that you wish. So she didn't actually believe that some of the revelations that he had were genuine. That doesn't mean that she didn't believe him completely, but it seems that she had doubt that he was actually lying, at least in that last portion of his life. So I think it's a kind of a mixture of the two. And you know,
And a
when you
lot of lying is that way, or a lot of just the basic concept. I can be fooled by propaganda. The propaganda itself was lies. I'm fooled by it. I believe it. Is it lies? Well, yeah, I'm lying, but without maybe knowing that I'm lying. But there probably are a few parts where you're being dishonest, like you're not looking into something that you should be looking into.
right, yeah. When lying becomes part of the person's modus,
Personality.
yeah, the way that they operate, that boundary between lying and truth, it becomes so blurred, even to the person themselves. When you're asking them if they're telling the truth or not,
Yeah.
they're probably not going to be able to make that difference as distinctly as a
Yeah.
person
So
who.
here's the issue. Even if let's say you intentionally make a lie early on in your life about something, and then later you're repeating that lie, remembering it, repeating that lie, remembering it. You don't remember the details anymore. Now you remember it as true.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
don't even remember that you lied. You don't remember the false things you made about it. You don't remember
exactly,
that you intentionally didn't look at criticism of this thing you were looking at.
exactly. Yeah, so I think that we don't really know the answer, but it's likely a kind of a complicated mixture of the two if we were to believe uh, the traditional narrative that came down to us.
I'm going to hell according to Islam.
Well, we're going to hell according to all religions.
You know, that reminds me of something I said during the June 14th. It came up to me while talking with Maryam. She was saying how our work to get rid of apostasy laws doesn't only help ex-Muslims, it helps Muslims. And then I made a point. Every Muslim is an apostate by some other Muslim's definition of Islam.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, if you look at the history of Islam, you will see, especially um, the first period, almost everybody was against everybody else because of the fact that everybody has their own interpretation and everybody thinks that they have a monopoly over truth, and so everybody's going to become an apostate. Everybody else is going to become uh, that group that is deforming the truth. And part of what we're actually seeing even today, this rift between the Sunni and the Shia, is exactly because of that. They do consider each other heretics in the general sense, but you actually do see them treating each other the same way they would treat apostates in a sense.
Um, do you have anything left? I mean, I guess we handled this one. Is there?
I don't know. Is there something if you scroll up? Is there
I listen to
something?
music. I don't pray 5 times a day. I wear revealing clothes in public. I don't wear hijab. I have male friends. I talk to the opposite gender. I wear perfume and makeup in public. I pluck my eyebrows. I draw so-called Allah's creations. What's wrong with all of these? Will Allah ever put me next to Adolf Hitler and Saddam Hussein in hell?
Well,
Well, there's 7 levels, right?
well, if you look at some of the Muslims, especially in the West, you would see them doing all that, and at the same time, they would say, "No, I'm a Muslim." And the reason for this very often is that they have this kind of uh, uh, um, feeble connection to the religion through what they consider to be fundamentals that cannot be broken. We mentioned something like that before,
Well,
like eating pork, for example.
part of their logic is even with the sins that I'm doing, because I'm a Muslim, I'm going to go to hell for a while, then I'm going to heaven. So
Well,
then I'm only like hanging out with Adolf Hitler for like 50,000 of the infinite years.
yeah, and you can find actually also hadiths that would say whoever utters the la ilaha illallah, the initial, I don't know what you would call it in English, the declaration of the oneness of God, you're actually going to enter heaven no matter what. Of course, if you disregard the fact that you don't really know and you might be doing something that for a whimsical God he might change his mind, but still you are a Muslim. There is a very famous hadith where one of the mercenaries that Muhammad hired, there was a tribe of mercenaries called Sa'alik that he hired, and the guy is named Abu Dhar. And he came to Muhammad and said, these are known for raiding and pillaging and doing all sorts of things that supposedly are not supposed to be ethical. And also, yeah, raping and pillaging mainly. And he said to him, "Will I be going um, to heaven?" To the effect, "Will I be going to heaven um, uh, even if I committed adultery and I stole?" He said, yes, as long as you have mentioned the Shahada, you are going to go to heaven. And he repeated it 3 times. And Muhammad kept repeating, yes, in spite of your nose, you are going to heaven. So,
But maybe you're only going to heaven because it's infinite time, right? Maybe you're going to heaven at the infinite point, which actually doesn't exist, and you never make it there. You know
yeah,
how math works, right?
yeah, and it's the same kind of thing that Muhammad supposedly said about his uncle. So his uncle was one of his biggest supporters. Uh, his uncle Abu Talib. He was one of his biggest supporters, but he refused to follow him. So because of the fact that he did not make that declaration, he is going to get the lowest level of hell compared to others.
It just
And
burns your feet,
yeah, something like that.
or maybe it's just 500 degrees.
Yeah, yeah.
It only melts your skin, not your bones.
Well, yeah. I think it's supposed to actually you have it on your feet, but it's going to melt your brain.
All right, let's go to the next one. Why is Islam so confusing? 52. And they say, I kind of already know what we're going to say, but let's go ahead and read this. Although I do not subscribe to Islam anymore, I still try to understand my Muslim friends. Everything's so wishy-washy. I don't even know who is right. When I check the Quran, it says this. Hadith says that. Scholars say it's something else entirely. And then the preachers say something completely different. Example, you must spread the word of Islam. Muhammad spread it through war. Khalifates spread it through enforcing rules. In the modern day, spread Islam through kindness. Keep preaching about Islam down everybody's throat. Do not force Islam onto anyone. Non-Muslims must follow our laws. This is the easiest example I can think of off the top of my head. There are many others. So why is Islam so confusing?
Well, I think part of this is historical, and part of it is so. If you look at the foundational text of Islam, the Quran and the Sunnah, Quran itself is a very ambiguous and confused text. So the confusion is inherently there. If you go back to the earliest exegetes, you will find that every time, especially at-Tabari being one of the biggest authorities on exegesis, you will see that he lists a lot of opinions, and at the end of explaining a verse, he would say, "But nobody knows; only God knows." So you have that ambiguity. And then you have another layer of ambiguity that comes from all that invention of the hadith that came after Muhammad for all sorts of political and social reasons. And so it wasn't created by one person, it was created by different people attributing them to Muhammad. And so what the Muslims had to contend with are these sources of ambiguity and lack of certainty, and that layer of contradiction that's inherent in the hadith, not to mention the contradiction between the hadith and the Quran itself. So yes, it is a confusing thing, and unless you belong to a specific sect or a specific school of thought in Islam, you're going to find everything confusing and contradictory, because everything that's outside that school is
Well,
going
it's still confusing and contradictory even within the sects. It's just that a dude or a few dudes, made some declarations about how to interpret everything, and those are not static. That's how they keep coming up with new sects. Like one guy said one thing, and then the next guy who's like the second man to the cult leader is like, wait a minute, you're saying something that don't make sense to me. I'm gonna go make my own cult that is 99% same as yours with 1% different. Like, it's still ambiguous. That's why it's so easy to change it again.
Yeah. It's that the ambiguity originally comes from the foundational texts themselves, and so you have all these interpretations, and you have those political and social needs that people want to adapt for their own benefit, and so they come up with new interpretations every single time. Um,
So
it's
I wanted to say, and this is something you and I talked about before. This concept of making things ambiguous. It's not just religions. It happens in the US. I'm sure it happens in every country. The reason Congress people do it, the people that make the laws, the reason they make them ambiguous is so that the law can be applied to anyone doing anything. If something's ambiguous enough, make one little interpretation and it puts anyone going against that law.
Yeah, but I don't think that this is the reason for the ambiguity in the Quran. I think that the Quran was not created as a single document with a single vision. It was it was basically made up from a kind of a hodgepodge mixture of different things with different layers at different times, with possible contradictory points of view, reformulating and adding to it. So it was not formulated with this kind of vision in mind.
I'm not going to add that clarification. They can come and watch and see that. That would be hard to add that clarification. I'm just going to send this and go to the next one. They want to leave Islam, but they're stuck. That sucks. You want to start reading this while I get ready, or?
Okay, so let's see.
5729. Sorry, I took away the screen from you.
That's fine.
Okay, I started to doubt Islam in like March, 3 months ago. What made me doubt is the idea of every religion being right. Like how? I thought, what if Islam is also not right? I started to write my thoughts about religion down, thought about everything in Islam, and in the process, I lost my faith. I don't regret it though. In May, I had decided that I was leaving Islam, and I came out to my parents. They acted like they understood at first, but now they are everything but understanding and compassionate. My own mother literally told me that my death was better than me leaving Islam. Yeah, I mean, let me finish reading, I guess. My dad isn't letting me take my hijab off nor leave Islam officially. I don't know what that means officially. I guess it depends what country you're in.
Yeah, in many countries, you're going to have in some kind of an official record what kind of religion you have.
Like a Malaysia, and that's one of the countries where you're officially not allowed to leave.
Well, it's not that only. It's the civil records that they have for you usually is going to be you're going to be automatically getting the religion of your parents if you have multiple religions in a country.
So what they mean by stuck is not an internal thing in their mind, which is what I thought they were going to say. They're stuck because they're 15 and can't leave, and their parents are like making them.
Yeah, it looks like there is something. I really don't think it's generally a good idea for someone this young to come out to their parents if they think that this is going to be jeopardizing their well-being. They're not in a situation where they can fend for themselves, that they can support themselves.
It depends on what country they're in, because if you're in the US or Canada or something like that, you have a pretty good support from the government.
Right. It doesn't look like this is the case here.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have anything to say. I don't think we're saying anything here.
Well,
or do you want to tell them something like, stay strong until you're get financially independent quick, or like?
Well, obviously, since it seems that this person has already come out to her parents, so whatever is going to happen has already happened. This means that she's going to have maybe a few years to figure out the repercussions and deal with the situation. I mean, if she feels stuck, that's probably a situation that's telling us that she's not independent. And if she's not independent, the only way would be to cope with the situation until she is. But
Maybe we should mention something about this.
well, what did you have in mind? Because there is something that can be said about this situation.
Many people say such things and don't actually mean it. They're being mean. What's the other word? Cruel. And they're doing it like to get you to obey.
Plus, if it's just the shock of knowing that, people under shock might say things that soften over time.
And if they were in shock, it's more likely to say they're more likely to say such things.
Yeah, especially if they realize that this is not a kind of a passing situation, a phase that's going to go away. This means that the way that she's going to be adapting rather to her parents' obstinance, they might have to also adapt to her, to hers. And so it can be a little bit of a battle of wills, but if played correctly, it can be softened, and that period of time that she still has with her family can be actually used in order to heal that rift that was created by this. So it might not necessarily be a bad thing, but it has to be dealt with in a careful way to show, okay, I left religion, but I'm not a different person right now. It's not like I now have a pitchfork and I grew horns and I'm now the devil. I'm still the same person.
All right, next one. 102.52. Let me write this down. This one is asking, can we use moral arguments to refute Islam? We could look a little bit about what they say in their post to look for exactly. I mean, or we could just answer this question directly. Let's just answer this question. So, what do you think?
Now, any kind of religion is initially developed in order to be a moral system to begin with. So when you're looking at that system as a system of morality, so it's obviously going to be lending itself automatically for that type of evaluation. So in principle, the answer is yes. But then it means that you're going to be judging that moral system using some kind of a set of moral standards. And what kind of standards are you using? Are you using the morals of the day? Are you using the morals of today? Are you judging it in a kind of an absolute way based on morals themselves or on the manifestations of those morals on the ground? Like, for example, how does Islam treat women, for example? By contrast, how does it treat orphans? So it's possible to come up with all sorts of things to think about how to make a judgment for or what kind of criteria you're going to be using in order to make that judgment.
I'll let them come listen to everything you just said, but I think this is probably good enough. It might be good enough for them to come say, come and watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a kind of set of preliminary ideas. I didn't really say much here. Plus, we didn't look at the details, so I'm not sure if we are addressing their concerns.
Sometimes people do write a post that really isn't connected at all to the title, but even in those cases, it's still okay to reply to the title.
So here, for example, in the first line, it's asking if you can prove that Islam is false from more arguments. So I'm not really concerned about a mathematical refutation of Islam. Rather, it's the refutation that's going to be based on its compatibility with human living.
Well, the way I would say it is this really basic thing. Look, if you find some bad morality in the religion, that is an imperfection, while the religion is claiming perfection. So that's a contradiction on its own. Now, of course, now you have to, you could get down to the point of saying, well, how do you know that's bad morality? Well, now you're talking about that, but that's a narrower issue.
Yeah, it's a wide topic, and I think when trying to approach a religion, you're probably going to be approaching it holistically. You cannot say, okay, I'm going to be refuting Islam based on moral reasoning only. No, there are so many,
exactly.
there are so many different aspects of the religion that you can deal with, and as a package, it has issues.
All right, here's the next one. Why does society fear free, visible women? I want to mention something. Obviously, this is about misogyny. I happened across some statistics on my YouTube. And I told you this before, that I get barely any women watching. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I thought of is maybe people don't even put in their male and female stuff. So maybe we're getting women who are assigned as men because they're not changing in YouTube. That's one theory I had. But I looked at the last month of stats. But before this, it was like 8% women, 92% men. In May, it was 58% women, 42% men. And I don't know, my theory is it's because of Maryam Namazi.
It's possible. Yeah, it is. That's,
and maybe also because I had Zara K and Aisha Khan on the live stream also.
The percentages also by themselves probably don't give the full picture. You have to also look at the numbers.
The quantity of them?
Yeah.
Well, if the numbers are low enough, they won't even show
it. What I mean is that if the number of women ballooned because of these guests, then you're probably going to have a core of usual viewers that are mainly male. And then you're going to have, in addition to that, a number of women that were not accounted for.
Meaning like there was a ton of women.
Yeah, and that's going to skew the statistic.
Or say it another way, all the new people were women.
Right. So I can basically, and I think I mentioned that before several times, I can corroborate this kind of observation based on Facebook statistics for our groups and pages. It's unfortunate, but this is the case. Even though in our magazine, for the first, I would say, 7 to 8 years of the run of the magazine, the chief executive editors were women. It's a kind of a discrepancy that happens between the actual community and the people who might be running projects of this sort. But yeah, it's an unfortunate statistic. And
so why is the world so fucking misogynistic?
Yeah, that's a different thing, because now you're addressing specifically the question that.
Well, first of all, in order to understand the specific shit, it makes sense to understand the general shit first. So why is the world misogynistic, independent of Islam, independent of religion? I'm guessing there are cultures, small, like little tribes that aren't misogynistic. I'm guessing they exist. But if you look at the big cultures, the ones that we know about, with the ancient ones that have a lot of history and they're also connected with each other, it's all misogyny.
Well, I can say something a little bit biological about this. We have carried an inheritance that is more closely related to chimps than bonobos. So bonobos are matriarchies, not patriarchies. And if you look at the level of violence that's there, you will find that it's significantly less than in the case of chimp culture. We are more related to chimps in that sense, and all the cultures that have been established for a very long time. Well, I wouldn't say all. There are exceptions. Most of them have relied on this dominance, this physical dominance that's coming from males. So the fact that males were leading war and aggression seems to have formed a great deal of how cultures later on developed. But the problem is that once we had industrialization, once we had this culture that we're living in right now, all of that is antiquated. We have individuals that are on equal terms, and yet we have that legacy that comes from ancient times, and it has a lot of invested interest in preserving it. So it's not that weird that that it has its own momentum to continue, even though it's past its expiry date.
Hey, you know what? I actually have to get off now. This is sort of, I have to deal with something.
Sure.
I wish I didn't have to end now. We're gonna go ahead and end now, and see everyone next time. All right. Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Bye.
I'm glad it was long enough. Take it easy.
Okay.
Bye.